Good evening, friends, and hello to everyone, and welcome to the Unacademy platform. Right. So today we are going to have a discussion of cell injury and inflammation topic. So I have brought some questions. Some will be easy, some will be tough. Don't worry about that thing. Basically, we are going to learn, and we are going to have a practice session for the like a aims. How you are going to practice? It will be kind of practice session. So take it as a practice session. Don't take it as the final verdict, and take it as for your self improvement also, right? So before I start, I will start with the prayer that you all should have a great and grand success. Need pattern, aims pattern, both are same for me, right? So this is the my profile at Unacademy. If you not aware of this, you can follow me here so that you can be updated about my future schedules, any special lecture or any subscribed lecture if I'm going to have on this Unacademy platform. So right now, I'm having one lecture at this. This batch has been started, and there is a one more batch which have been started for the 2022. In that batch also, I am taking lecture. What I will suggest you, this is a comprehensive course, and this will be definitely helpful for the 2021 also. It is not only for the 2022, it will also help you in the 2021 NEET PG exam. So definitely it is not only 2022, it is 2021 also. It will help, and it will be worth to join this, right? And if you are joining, so you can use this name as a code. Any course on Unacademy, if you're joining, you can use this my name as a code, and you will be getting discount for this thing, right? Fine. So yesterday we have a very good session for the bleeding disorders, approach towards the bleeding disorder, and here I am showing you the winners, right? So as usual, I have promised that I will be showing you in my class also, and I have published on my page and Facebook areas also. In my Instagram also, you can follow me with my name only, right? So for that you don't require any, So first is the Dr. Ayushi. That my congratulations to Ayushi, and keep working hard. You still have long way to go. And second is the Abhidi Sethi, and third is the Ash. So this is how it is going on, and you can see top 10 people are here. So that's great. So it's just for the incentive for you all that you should be, stay motivated, and you should have a positive competition among yourself. Don't feel jealous about anyone. Don't feel depressed about anything. Anybody can come up in the last moment. So keep working hard. Basic motive is keep working hard. Definitely you will rise, and definitely you will get the good rank in your exam also. Right. So let's start with the question number 1. And always remember, before I give you the options, I will tell you, whenever you are attempting NEET PG, AIMS, PGI, JIPMER, NIMHANS, all these bigger exams, what is the most important thing? Most important thing is you have to see the language. Very important thing, because that language will be, the base of the concept. Sometimes language will be changed and the concept will be changed. So you have to be reading question 2 times and read option 1 time before you give your answer. So let's start. Question number 1. During misfolding of the protein, which of the following is first activated on cell surface? Do not post in the comment box. That is my request, because many students are attempting it sincerely. So let's be competitively in positive manner, right? Good. So I can see that during misfolding of the protein, which of the following is activated on the cell surface? Please read the question. Okay. Very few people have got the right answer, because this question, that's what I said. You have to read the question and then you will understand the meaning. Misfolding of the protein, what will happen? Whenever there is a misfolding of the protein, remember, this will induce apoptosis. In a very simple manner, I wanted to tell you. So tell me, which one will induce apoptosis? Why many of you have given BCL2 as an answer? What is BCL2? What is BCL2? BCL2 is anti-apoptotic. Then why your answer is anti-apoptotic? So misfolding of the protein, which of the following first activated? See this, first activated. Question is first. See what I said. you have to be very sharp in reading the language, especially in the AIMS and NEET PG exam, right? First activated, even BACS is also apoptotic, but these are not the first activated, not the first activated. These are also involved in apoptosis, but these are not the first activated. Who will be the first activated? See, this question is about, try to understand, what is misfolding of the protein? Misfolding of the protein is a kind of stress. Remember, what are the stress which will be induced on the cell surface? So remember, stress can be the radiation injury, physical injury, chemical injury, or even the misfolding of the protein. So now you understood. I have kept this question silently with the reference of the misfolding of the protein. So misfolding of the protein is a stress, right? Whenever stress is induced on a cell, which will be activated first? BH3. What are BH3? What are BH3? BH3 are also known as stress sensors of the cell. And who are the stress sensors of the cell? These are Bimla is bad in bidding. Why? Because he is going for Puma. What her husband says, go for Noxa. So these are 5 BH3 only protein family member, right? So remember, these are 5 BH3 only protein family member, right? So what is their function? They are a stress sensor. So what they are going to do? They are going to induce apoptosis. How this BH3 will, see this, what is going to happen? Now BH3 will activate the BACS, which is on the inner membrane of the mitochondria, and it will inhibit the anti-apoptotic which is present on the outer membrane of the mitochondria. Because of this, what will happen? Mitochondrial permeability channel will be formed here. So you can see mitochondrial permeability channel has been formed here. And now through this permeability channel, proteins will be leaking out and they will be inducing apoptosis. In simple manner, I am saying you, right? I'm not going detail into the mechanism of apoptosis. Now you understood. Now you understood this point. So stress is the reason for the BH3 induction. And who are the members of the BH3? BIM, BAT, BIT, Puma, Noxa. These are the 5 members. And in this question, what I have given you? Noxa. So this is the right answer. Now you understood. So this is the very important thing. During misfolding of the protein, which of the following is first activated? Your answer will be Noxa will be first activated. Why? Because it is the BH3 only protein, which are the stress sensors of the cell, right? Which are the stress sensors of the cell. So now you understood. That is how question will be asked in your exam. These are simple question only. Just I have twisted the language and I have used the some concept, because we always read intrinsic pathway, extrinsic pathway, but we don't pay attention who is the starting point. Who is the starting point? Stress is the starting point. And then stress sensors are the starting point. BH3 only protein are the starting point. Their members are the starting point, right? So now understood. So that is how you have to solve this question. Is it okay to all of you? You all understood? BCL2 is inhibited. BCL2 is anti-apoptotic, right? So they are going to inhibit BCL2 so that they will not allow any apoptosis. Means they will prevent apoptosis, right? So they have to stop this anti-apoptotic gene so that they can promote apoptosis, right? Now coming to the next question. Again, a very good question. This is how question will be asked in your exam. Look at the question. Which of the following is interleukin 1B converting enzyme? Which is interleukin 1B converting enzyme? I have just modified the one of the NEET PG question which had been asked previous year. Interleukin 1B converting enzyme, and where it will be used. So I can see that 43% of you are giving me right answer. Okay. So 43% of you have given me right answer. See this. Again, I will tell you. Interleukin 1B. See, these are the common sense question, right? So have a common sense. What is interleukin 1? Can you tell me? It is an inflammatory cytokine, right? Done. It is inflammatory cytokine. So what they are going to do? They are going to do cell membrane damage. They are going to do cell membrane damage, and there will be a presence of inflammation. Right. Now look at the option. C3, C6, C9. What are these things? These are apoptosis inducing caspases. Now you understood? Apoptosis inducing caspases. Remember that initiation. You remember the apoptosis initiation is having intrinsic pathway and extrinsic pathway. Right? Intrinsic pathway C9. I looks like 9. Extrinsic pathway E for 8. And in human being, it is C10. Right? And then there is another pathway which is called as another event that is called as execution. So initiation and execution. So who is involved in execution? C3, C6, C7. So now you can see that C9 is here, C3 is here, right? And C6 is here. So all these are apoptotic things. All these are apoptotic caspases. And in apoptosis, will you find cell membrane damage and inflammation? No, no cell membrane damage, right? So you remember, there will be no cell membrane damage. There will be no inflammation, right? So no cell membrane damage, no inflammation in case of the apoptosis, right? So what is the answer? Caspase 1 is the answer. So caspase 1 is also known as interleukin 1b converting enzyme, and this is involved in pyroptosis. See this, I have drawn this pyroptosis. What happens in pyroptosis? I'll just brief you, right? What is pyroptosis? Is a caspase 1, listen to me very carefully, caspase 1, 11 in the older robins. Now new robins, it has added 4 and 5 also. So all these caspases, caspase 1, 11, 4, 5 induced programmed cell death. Programmed cell death is called as pyroptosis, right? So here we have to understand 11 is also there. Many people, they think that 11 has been removed from the robin, so it has been gone. It's not like that. They have not written because they have not written, but it is still existing, right? So be careful in exam. See 1, 11, 4, 5. All these are associated. So I'm just talking about the caspase 1. So what happens when the antigen is usually flagellin of the flagellated organism. So flagellin antigen will come. Either they will combine with toll-like receptor on the surface of the cell membrane, or they will come directly into the cytoplasm. And in cytoplasm, they are going to combine with the nod-like receptor. Nod-like receptor. So when they will combine with nod-like receptor, what will happen? They are going to activate inflammasomes. And inflammasome is going to activate the procaspase 1 into active form of caspase 1, right? And this active form of caspase 1 is going to activate the inactive or pro form of interleukin 1, or you can say that interleukin 1b into the active form of interleukin 1. So that is why caspase 1 is called as interleukin 1b convertase enzyme. So now you can see that interleukin 1b converting enzyme. So who is this? It is caspase 1 specifically, right? So now you understood. Previous year, this was the question in NEET PG exam. That question was like this: IL-1 activation is done by which caspase? So IL-1 activation is done by which caspase? It is done by caspase 1. So this is the programming for the pyroptosis. So when this IL-1 will be activated, what is going to happen? There will be a cell membrane damage. And because of the cell membrane damage, they will be having presence of inflammation. So now you understood, cell membrane damage and inflammation will be present. So that is how question will be asked in your exam. These are simple questions. Only what I have done, I have changed the language of the MCQ, right? So that is how question will be framed in your exam, and examiner will be testing your concept, right? So now you understood what should be the answer. Caspase 1 is called as interleukin 1b converting enzyme. Remember, caspase 1 is called as interleukin 1b converting enzyme. During pyroptosis, they will activate interleukin 1b into the active form of interleukin 1, which will cause cell membrane damage and then inflammation, right? Done? You all understood? Coming to the next question. Ready for that? Get ready. So this is all about, see, this is the question from the New Robbins, but something is from other areas also I have taken. It is New Robbins plus above, right? But it may be asked in your exam. Right. All of the following are true about efferocytosis except. All of the following are true except. This is a tough question, extremely tough question. In my rating, extremely tough question, but I can expect because few days back we have discussed similar kind of question from this topic, similar kind of question. Yeah, I have explained, but this is something different. I have changed some option here. Language has been also changed. So I can see that, but still I can see that 39% of you people have given me right answer. That is very good response. That is very, very good response. Right. So I think this is a new topic and many of you are not knowing about this. So first I will explain this. What is the efferocytosis? Then I will come back to the option again, right? And then we will discuss about it. So one by one, what is efferocytosis? First of all, we should know that what is efferocytosis? Efferocytosis meaning is to take to the grave. Remember, this is the literal meaning of the efferocytosis, means they are taking to the grave, right? What is efferocytosis? Why it is very important? What we should understand about this, which is not given in Robbins, right? Robbins has mentioned this, but not vaguely it has been mentioned. So I wanted to make it very prominent for you so that you can understand. It's an immunologically silent phenomenon. Means there will be no immunological reaction. That is the meaning. There will be no immunological reaction. It is a immunologically silent phenomenon. So what they are going to do in this immunologically silent way, they are going to uptake the apoptotic cell. So immunological silent uptake of the apoptotic cell by whom? By a special type of phagocytic cell. Remember, now we are using the word special type. They are not ordinary phagocytic cell. Remember, they are not ordinary phagocytic cell. These are special type. And that is why such a special type of phagocytic cells are also known as efferocytes. So these are called as efferocytes. So now come to the efferocytosis. Efferocytosis is a immunologically silent uptake of the apoptotic cell. When apoptotic cells are damaged or they're floating in our tissue or in blood, they will be taken up by this special type of phagocytic cell. And in this phagocytosis, there will be no immunological response. Means there will be no autoimmunity or there will be no change in the immunity. So that is why it is called as immunologically silent uptake of the apoptotic cell by a special type of phagocytic cell. You will understand why it is a special type. Just wait, you will understand. We will be coming to that point also. Why it is a special, you will understand. Right. Now coming to the next thing. What are the efferocytes? Right, cannonball. Now you can see that your question is given, your answer is given here, right? So efferocytes are professional as well as non-professional, both kind of phagocytic cell. Normally, when you see the phagocytosis, you will be seeing only macrophages are involved. But here you can see the macrophage dendritic cells usual, but non-professionally it can be also done by fibroblasts and epithelial cell. That is why these are special. Number one, why they are special? Why efferocytes are special? Because they are having both professional and non-professional phagocytic cells. And here, even a fibroblast or epithelial cell can perform the phagocytosis. Right? Number one. Now you understood. Now, number two. In apoptosis, what will happen? So during apoptosis, what happens? That efferocytosis, it will remove the cell. See this, what I'm writing. Remove the dead cell before the damage of the membrane. Remove the dead cell before, suppose it is a phagocytic cell, right? And they are going to remove this apoptotic cell, right? Suppose this apoptotic cell membrane is getting damaged before the phagocytosis, what will happen? Content will release outside. And this release of the content can alter the immunity, right? Can alter the immunity. So that is what I have written. It removes the dead cell before the damage of membrane and it prevents necrotic events. So that is how I am showing you. There is no cell membrane damage. Before cell membrane damage start, this phagocytic cell will engulf them and they will not allow all these things, right? So it will remove the dead cell before the damage of the cell membrane, and it will prevent necrotic event. And by preventing necrotic event, it will stop the local immune responses. That is why efferocytes are important. In routine or in ordinary phagocytosis, there may be a local immune response, and they can, while they are doing the damage, toxin of the damaged cells can induce autoimmunity or autoimmune disorders also, right? So now you understood why efferocytosis is different, because now you can see, because they have some non-phagocytic cells like epithelial cell and fibroblast which can do the phagocytosis. Second, you can understand they will remove the dead cell before the damage of their cell membrane, right? Before the damage of the cell membrane, so that there will be no necrosis, there will be no immune response, right? So that is how they will prevent autoimmunity. So you can say that efferocytosis is also a mechanism to prevent autoimmunity, right? Now come to the next point. What is again very important? See, these are the important point we have to understand. These are the questions which examiner is going to ask. Efferocytosis, right? How it is going to happen? What is the mechanism of efferocytosis? What is the mechanism of efferocytosis? Right. So mechanism of efferocytosis is you will find the apoptotic cells. See, these are the apoptotic cells which has to be phagocytosed by phagocytic cell. So how phagocyte will identify? Now the question is, see, it is now duty of the phagocytes to identify which cell to eat and which cell to not to eat, right? So how they are going to eat? There will be a signal, eat me signal. So what are the eat me signal? Eat me signals are two important signals, phosphatidylserine, and remember this is the calreticulin. Calreticulin. So these are eat me signal, phosphatidylserine and calreticulin, right? So that's what I'm explaining, how efferocyte is going to recognize, right? So now you can see this is the efferocyte. Efferocyte means phagocytic cell. So how they are going to recognize? Now these receptors of the phagocytic cells, they will identify this phosphatidylserine on the membrane or calreticulin on the membrane, and they will perform the phagocytosis, which is called as efferocytosis. Now everybody understood about this point? Phagocytic cells are efferocytes, right? How they are going to identify apoptotic cells to eat? By seeing their eat me signal. And who are eat me signal? These are the two plasma membrane protein. Remember, these are the two plasma membrane protein, phosphatidylserine and calreticulin, right? Phosphatidylserine and calreticulin. So once they are present, they will combine with the eat me signal. These receptors will combine with the receptors of the phagocytic cells or scavenger receptors, and they will be taken up by them. So that is how efferocytosis will be completed, right? Now you understood about this point. Now come to the next thing. Why a healthy cell will be not phagocytosed by these efferocytes? Why a healthy cell is not taken up by the efferocytes or phagocytic cell? That is because of a signal called as don't eat me signal. Remember, this is very important, not given in Robbins. I'm telling you, in Robbins only 5 lines are given, but all those 5 lines are giving this meaning only, which I'm elaborating from the other resources also, from other immunology book also, right? So you can expect these question in AIIMS exam. I'm telling you, you can expect this question in your AIIMS exam or PGI or JIPMER exam, right? So don't eat me signal is the transmembrane protein, which is called as CD47. So remember, what is CD47? CD47 is a transmembrane protein, right? So this transmembrane protein CD47 is going to combine with signal regulatory protein alpha, and this signal regulatory protein alpha, what they are going to do? They are going to inhibit the phagocytic cell. So this is how they are going to inhibit the phagocytic cell. So that is why this is called as anti-efferocytic signal. Who is anti-efferocytic? CD47. So now you understood, healthy cells are having CD47. Right? Healthy cells are having CD47, and they are going to combine with signal regulatory protein alpha. This is the another receptor on the phagocytic cell, right? This is the another receptor, and this receptor is for combining with CD47, and after that they are going to inhibit the phagocytic cell, and they will not allow any kind of phagocytosis or efferocytosis. That is why CD47 is also called as anti-efferocytic signal, right? Now you all understood? Fine. last point. I think it's the last point. So efferocytosis, how it is important. These are anti-inflammatory. They prevent inflammation. You remember, it will avoid any cell membrane damage, and before that they will engulf. You remember what I have told you, right? And they help in growth promotion also. So obviously, if inflammation is not there, so growth promotion will be there, right? And if there is a defect, so you remember what I said, local immune response will be not started because of the efferocytosis, right? So it can prevent autoimmunity. So it can prevent autoimmunity. Remember what I have said, that it will prevent autoimmunity. It will prevent autoimmunity. And if there is a defect, then what will happen? They will be associated with autoimmune disorders, and these are the SLE and rheumatoid arthritis, right? So now you understood. So these are the important points. I hope you all understood about the efferocytosis. Examiner may ask a question, right? Now come to the question. How we are going to solve this question? One by one, you tell me, right? Which one is true or false? Option A, immunologically silent uptake of apoptotic cell, true or false? You can download this, right? After the lecture, it will be downloaded and you see it multiple times. So it's a true statement. Very good. It will be carried by macrophages and fibroblasts. See, this is how examiner will try to deviate you or distract you. So that time now you understood. Efferocytosis can be done by both professional, non-professional. Fibroblast, non-professional. Epithelium, non-professional. So that is also a true statement, right? Apoptotic cells carry specific eat me signals like calreticulin, true or false? You remember? You remember calreticulin, phosphatidylserine, they will expressed on the apoptotic cell surface, right? Apoptotic cell surface, they will be expressed and they will combine with scavenger receptor and they will be undergoing phagocytosis. So that is a true statement. That is a true statement. So what is remaining? Now the last statement, transmembrane protein CD47 will induce pro-efferocytic signal. Pro-efferocytic. What is this? Pro or anti? You remember? You remember this? When CD47 will combine with the phagocytic signal regulatory protein alpha, then they will inhibit the phagocytosis and this will create anti-type of anti-efferocytic signal. So this is the wrong statement, right? So this is the wrong statement and this is the right answer. Transmembrane protein CD47 will induce pro. It is a false statement. It is a false statement. What is it? This is the anti-efferocytic signal. Now you all understood. So that is how examiner will be asking here, don't eat me signal. That don't eat me signal, right? So that is the don't eat me signal. CD47 is a very important transmembrane protein. When I was going through the article, I saw that this is one of the, very in-depth studied molecular marker nowadays in this, immunology. So examiner can ask all these questions. That is why I took this question purposefully. This is not given in Robbins. This is not in Robbins. All these things are given in Robbins, but this is not given in Robbins. So please be careful. Right. So let's start another question. This question is a real, very conceptual question. You have to think about it. There is a diagram. I'm giving you a hint also, and this diagram will be the clue for the answer. I have given you answer also. 7-year-old patient's cell was analyzed and clinical feature is given here. And you have to tell me, most likely it is due to what? Yeah, PAS syndrome. I think we Indian will make this PAS syndrome only one day. The progeria will be gone. We will be remembering only PA. Even I remember PA only whenever I see this kind of kids, right? This is how question will be asked. I'm telling you, this is a very good question. You are seeing the nuclear membrane and immunofluorescence, beautiful picture, beautiful clinical correlation, right? So I can see many of you have given good answer, more than 40%. So that's great response by all of you. Great response by all of you. See this here in this question, there are hints also. 7-year-old means childhood progeria. This is a, what is this? PA, na? Progeria, shiny skin, prominent veins. Clinically, you will see the shiny skin, prominent veins. Prominent veins. So this is a feature of the progeria or progeroid syndrome. Progeria or progeroid syndrome. And especially if you can see, it is a childhood progeria because it's a small baby, right? Childhood progeria. because it's a history 7-year-old, it has been given, right? 7-year-old, it has been given, right? Analyze further this one. Nuclear, can you see the language? The second big hint examiner is giving nuclear immunofluorescence. Only one is the nuclear protein here which will be defective, right? Only one nuclear protein which will be defective here, and that is the lamin A. That's all. There is no doubt in this question. This question is the direct question. See, you can see this. What is this immunofluorescence? I'll just show you. I will just show you. See this. What is this immunofluorescence? These are the nuclear immunofluorescence. Can you see this question was nuclear immunofluorescence is given below. In this nuclear immunofluorescence, this one is the normal nuclear immunofluorescence. Here you can see that nuclear membrane is irregular. Here you can see that there is a irregular nuclear membrane. And irregular nuclear membrane is because of mutation in the lamin. Remember, there is a gene called lamin A gene, right? So lamin A gene, remember lamin A gene is controlling the nuclear membrane activity or nuclear membrane formation. So if it is normal, nuclear membrane will be normal, right? So if there is a mutation, in lamin A gene, nuclear membrane will be also defective and they will be forming an abnormal protein that is called as progerin, right? So this is how progerin will be formed, and this is the Hutchinson progeria syndrome, Hutchinson-Gilbert progeria syndrome, right? So this is the Hutchinson progeria syndrome. Answer is this one. So lamin A gene is having mutation. So now I will show you. These are the genetic progeroid syndrome given in Harrison 20th edition. So this is from the Harrison 20th edition. 19th edition also it is given. It is not update of the Harrison. So it's given in Harrison as it is, but I have simplified it at some way because Harrison has not mentioned about which is the adult and which one is the childhood, right? So I wanted to say that when you talk about Werner syndrome, remember, when you talk about Werner syndrome, it is a adult progeria syndrome. So that patient was not the adult. That patient was 7-year-old. Werner is ruled out, right? Now look at the second one, Hutchinson-Gilford progeria syndrome. Hutchinson-Gilford progeria syndrome is the childhood progeria. This is not given in Harrison, right? Childhood progeria. And the third one is the Cocaine syndrome. This is the autosomal recessive, and this is also childhood progeria, right? Progeroid means, collection of the disorders which will be simulating, because I will just tell you one more thing. This Hutchinson-Gilford, that nuclear membrane is defective, what I was showing you, right? Progerin is also associated with the normal aging. Remember, this is also associated with normal aging. This is the line of Harrison. You keep that in your mind. That is why it has been given the broader name that progeroid syndrome, because progerin is normally formed in our aging. When we are getting older, our nuclear membrane is getting defective because of the defect in the lamin A gene, right? And then we are getting older. So this is also associated with, remember, this is also associated when they get mutation. Say in our body, lamin A gene function is getting decreased, not the mutation. But when we see the mutation, in the lamin A gene, nuclear membrane will become defective, and this baby will be having onset in the infancy, and probably by the age of 10 years, they will be dead, right? They will be dead. And remember, this is again a very important point. I have seen few MCQ book, which are standard US Assembly book, not the Indian author book. They have given a question and they have mentioned that Hutchinson-Gilford progeria is a hereditary. So that is why I took this from the Harrison. Harrison says that it is non-hereditary. Remember, it is non-hereditary condition. So non-hereditary condition, lamin A gene mutation, nuclear membrane will be defective, onset is in an infancy, and death will be by 10 years, right? What is Werner syndrome? Werner syndrome is adult progeria syndrome, right? These are also autosomal recessive hereditary. Gene mutation is the WRN gene, right? And what it encode for helicase enzyme. So because of this mutation, helicase enzyme will be defective, and helicase is required for repair and replication, right? So repair and replication will be defective. So what will happen? This patient will be developing all disorders like atherosclerosis, diabetes mellitus, cancer, will start by the teenage. Remember, that is the very, very important thing. Werner is going to start from the teenage, and he will be dead by the age of 50 years. Right? So that is why I said it's an adult progeria. Hutchinson Gilford is the childhood. So Werner is adult and rest of the two are childhood progeria. Right? Cocaine syndrome is again a very important syndrome because this patient will be having autosomal recessive inheritance and they are having mutation in the gene called as ERCC6 and 8. ERCC6 and 8, these are the DNA excision repair gene. These are the DNA excision repair gene. Because of this, what will happen? They will be having neurological deficit and they are having xeroderma pigmentosa like symptom and they will be having excessive photosensitivity, right? And they will also be dead by childhood itself, right? So 10 to 15 years, their survival time, they are not going to survive beyond the 10 year or 15 years. So now you understood genetic progeroid syndrome. 3 syndromes are there: Werner, Hutchinson, and Cocaine. Out of these 3, only Werner is the adult one. Rest of the 2 are the pediatric one, right? Werner syndrome is helicase defect. Hutchinson is lamin A, nuclear membrane will be defective. Cocaine is the DNA excision repair gene defect, right? So you have to remember these important points, right? And the most important thing that you can see the typical feature: shiny skin, prominent veins on the on the face, and face will be having no eyebrows. Remember, that is the just remember. I think you will remember this part, right? What you will not remember, I have doubt now. Right now, you will also remember that thing, that irregular nuclear membrane on immunofluorescence microscopy with this kind of presentation. If examiner is giving this picture, remember he is talking about the lamin A gene mutation, and that will be the reason for the Hutchinson-Gilford progeria syndrome. So now, what should be the answer for this question? Lamin A, right? So now you understood, because this nuclear membrane is defective, so answer would be lamin A. ERCC6 and 8 is associated with the Cocaine syndrome. They are associated with the Cocaine syndrome, right? Helicase is associated with the Werner syndrome. Should not be confused with the Wermer syndrome. Should not be confused with the Wermer syndrome. What is Wermer? Wermer is the MEN1 syndrome, right? Which is the endocrinological disorder. And Werner is the premature aging because of the helicase, right? Fine. Is it clear to all of you? So that is how simple question. See this question, why I am framing like this, so that others are not having any nuclear membrane feature, because lamin A is the specific thing which I wanted to show you. Lamin A is the specific feature which I wanted to show you. Others are not going to control, right? So now we will be moving to the next question. Yes, this is again a very dangerous question. Read this question. I am telling you, this is not easy question. It's a dangerous question. All of the following will promote aging except. They are not, you cannot say cytoplasmic, but their nuclear membrane will not be damaged. That is what I wanted to say. %31% of you have given me right answers, right? So I can understand this question is little new question from the Robbins only, but the line I have taken from the Robbins, probably it has not been read or not been taught by me also in lecture. So that is why I kept this question, because examiner names will be asking similar type of the question only, right? So here, what I want to say that one by one we will analyze aging. What is the most important, hypothesis for aging? Most important hypothesis for aging is free radical damage, right? Free radical damage is the most important, hypothesis for aging. This we all know that. Second thing, can you tell me, the first statement is a true statement, right? Increased free radical damage. So obviously increased free radical damage will be causing aging. What about the second option? Increased cross-linking of the collagen. increased cross-linking of collagen will promote aging or prevent aging? True or false? It's a true statement. Very good. It's a true statement. It's a true statement. Always remember, increased cross-linking of the collagen. Increased cross-linking of the collagen will promote aging. So free radical damage, increased cross-linking of the collagen will promote aging. Now come to the third option, telomere attrition. Telomere attrition. Yeah, I knew that this was the question in the AIMS and NEET 2017. This second option was the question in the AIMS and NEET 2017. That is why I kept this option, because many of us, we think that if there is more cross-linking of the collagen, so wound strengthening will be there, and that is why an anti-aging. But remember like this, if wound is getting strengthened, so what is happening to the wound? They are getting older and older, older and older. So always remember, cross-linking of the collagen will be making us older and older, older and older, like wounds, right? Third statement is telomere attrition. Telomere attrition is also, it's a simple telomere shortening. So whenever you see the telomere shortening, that is also associated with the aging, right? They are present at the end of the chromosome, and with the cell division, they will be getting shorter and shorter, and after some time they will be all eliminated and cell will be dead, right? So telomere shortening is also associated with the Hayflick limit. Just remember, because this was the question in the same exam. Hayflick limit means a cell can divide only limited time. Limited time of the multiplication will be there, and this limited time of multiplication is 40 to 60 times. Remember, 40 to 60 times, on an average it is 50 times. Please do not go with the 60 to 70 times which is given in my book. Now it has been changed. My book I have not updated. Now I am updating that thing also. Remember, this is the latest update of the Hayflick limit. Cell is not going to divide after 40 to 60 times, because of the all telomeres will be used up, right? So best, see, examiner will not, if examiner will be asking you question 40, 50, 60, so best answer will be the average value 50 times. This is the best answer. This is the best answer. They will not give 40, 60. This kind of question will not be asked. But we cannot say that. What is the mood of examiner? But if examiner asks you 40 and 60, go for the maximum value, because our cell will divide maximum, right? So maximum value you have to go for that thing. Probably they will not be giving question like this. If they are giving 40, 60, then definitely they are going to give you 50 also. And that time 50 should be the right answer, right? So now 3 options are done. So what is the answer? What is remaining? The 4th option is remaining, and this is our answer. Activation of the genes encoding P16 or INK4A proteins, which are the, and activation of what gene? These are the tumor suppressor gene. Remember, these are the tumor suppressor genes, which are encoding protein P16 and PINK4A. And remember what they are going to do. See, why they are anti-aging? Why they are anti-aging? Because this P16, INK4A, they are going to stop the cell cycle at G1 as checkpoint. They will inhibit them. They will stop the cell cycle. And if cell cycle has been stopped, so what will happen? There will be no cell cycle movement, and there will be no aging. Now you understood. So there is no aging. No aging, right? So this is going to reduce the aging. So this will not promote the aging. So now you understood, whenever there is a tumor suppressor gene like P16 or INK4A is induced, they are going to stop the cell cycle, and that is why aging will be also stopped, right? Aging will be also stopped because cell is not going to divide further and getting the any mutation or any kind of changes, right? So this is very, very important point which I saw, and I thought like this, examiner can ask question in your exam, because very prominently written in the new Robbins. Older Robbins, it is not given in the prominent manner, but in the new Robbins, they have written the languages activation of the tumor suppressor gene encoding P16 INK4A will be preventing aging, right? So that point you have to keep in mind. So that's why I kept this question, right? Now come to the next question. This question is easy question, maybe hard also, because the diagram is easy, right? This is a skin pathology. 6-year-old boy has been presented with the features given in this image, right? Which of the following is not correct about this condition? Which of the following is not correct about this condition? You have to be very watchful for the question, right? You read the question, you read the language, read the question 2 times, read the option 1 time, read the options carefully, and then give your answer. That is the tips for this kind of MCQ, which looks deceptively easy, but may be a tough question. But this diagram is saying so many things loudly so that you can identify. So very good response. 39% of you have given me right answer. Right. So what is this? Ichthyosis looks like a fish scale, right? Snake scale or fish scale, right? So this is the ichthyosis. And in ichthyosis, what is the problem? So see this, what I'm showing you, ichthyosis, and they will have dry. So you can see dry and they are thick fish scale like skin. So that is the important point about the ichthyosis, right? So dry, thick fish scale like skin will be present here, right? Just a minute. Coming to the question. One by one, we will see why it is dry and you fish like or snake like dry scales, because of the chronic excessive keratin accumulation, right? Because in these patient, problem is that their cell to cell addition in the keratin layer will be not removed, so they will be there and they will be keep on accumulating. Mean to say that there will be no desquamation. There will be no desquamation, right? And there will be excessive deposition of the keratin. So this is the A statement, is the true statement, right? So because of the excessive keratin, you are seeing this kind. So remember, this dry, thick fish scale-like skin lesion is because of the increased amount of the keratin only, right? So this increased amount of the keratin is the reason for fish scale-like lesion, and this is also due to decreased desquamation, right? So due to decreased desquamation, that is the reason for the excessive accumulation of the keratin cell in the stratum corneum, right? Now, second option, due to persistent cell-to-cell addition within the stratum corneum. Usually what happens in stratum corneum, cells will be damaged after some time and then they will be removed and they will be recycled. But here what is happening, there is a persistent cell-to-cell addition. So that is a true statement. So that is the reason for this scaly, images are, scaly things are still present, right? It can have X-linked recessive. Can you tell me what is this C option, true or false? Yeah, it can be seen in all age group. It is not limited to the one age group. It can be seen in all age group. It can be present. It can have X-linked, but pediatric age group is commonly affected. It can have X-linked recessive inheritance pattern. Can you tell me what is this, true or false? X-linked recessive. Why I have kept it? Because they will be having all pattern of inheritance. Remember, ichthyosis is having X-linked recessive also, autosomal recessive also, autosomal dominant also. But out of all these, which is most common pattern of inheritance, if examiner asks you, answer should be autosomal dominant. So most common pattern of inheritance will be autosomal dominant. I kept out X-linked recessive to make the question tough because this diagram was easy, right? So always remember, X-linked recessive pattern will be present. It's a true statement. But most common pattern will be the autosomal dominant. If examiner started writing that X-linked recessive is the most common pattern of inheritance in this patient, so that will be a false statement, right? That will be a false statement. So now you understood that most common is autosomal dominant, but X-linked recessive can be also present in this patient. Now coming to the fourth option. Microscopy will show compact stratum corneum. That is a true statement. With severe inflammation. So what do you think that? True or false? True or false? It's a false statement. It's a false statement. See, that's true. Compact stratum corneum will be there because there is because there is excessive keratin accumulation. There is a persistent cell-to-cell addition, right? But what is happening? This is not an inflammatory disorder. So there will be no inflammation or very mild inflammation. So here you will see mild or no inflammation. So now you can see that this is the ichthyosis skin biopsy, right? What we are seeing in this, you can see all these are keratin only. This is the keratin. right? Usually keratin will be very thin, one layer, this much of thickness will be there for the keratin. But you can see the thickness has been increased. So disproportionate thickening of the stratum corneum. Now, can you tell me in this biopsy, are you seeing anywhere inflammatory cells? Anywhere inflammatory cells? So no inflammation. So disproportionate thickening of the stratum corneum with no inflammation, right? So no inflammation or very mild inflammation will be rarely seen. So that is why this option will be wrong answer, right? So that's why D should be right answer. That is how question will be asked in exam, right? So be careful, examiner will be asking question like this only. They will be giving partially correct statement. So I will say that D statement is partially correct, right? But rest of the other options are fully correct. That is why we have to rule out this option. And you have to be very careful because this is a very challenging, savior is a very, it's a kind of a grave mistake if you are not able to identify this in your exam. That is why I said during exam time, read question carefully. Right. Now coming to the next question. Biopsy from an inflammatory skin lesion is shown below. All of the following are true regarding this condition except, can you tell me what is the diagnosis? All of the following are true. Yes, very good, Siddharth. Very nice. Very nice. So if you have done the diagnosis from my side, I will give you 100% marks, right? So my question is based on the diagnosis of this image. You see the image, you find something characteristic or diagnostic finding, and then you come to the answer. Right. So good response only for this question. Right. So biopsy from inflammatory skin lesion is shown below. All of the following are true regarding this condition. So what we are seeing in this biopsy, right? What we are seeing in this biopsy, I will show you the biopsy here. This one. You can see this is a case of psoriasis. Right. So why I'm calling it as a psoriasis? Because of this collection of the neutrophil which we are seeing, right? This collection of the neutrophil is called as Monro's microabscess. Why it is called as microabscess? Because when you are seeing the clinical examination of the skin, right? Clinical examination of the skin, you will not find any abscess. Clinically, it is not visible, right? So how it is going to be visible? There is abscess by the microscope, right? Under the microscopy, that is the meaning of microabscess, right? So we cannot see on the clinical examination. Only on the microscopy, I will be or pathologist will be seeing this, and they will be telling that this is the microabscess is present, right? So collection of neutrophil, collection of neutrophil, these are inflammatory neutrophil, and this is called as spongiform pustule of Kagoge. Remember, spongiform pustule of Kagoge is seen in which of the following inflammatory disorder of the skin? Psoriasis, right? Remember which disorder? Psoriasis you will see, right? Now come to the psoriasis. If you are going to see the gross or clinical examination, it's a very characteristic. So I think from the day one in dermatology posting, everybody can identify the psoriasis because of this silvery white scale, right? Because of this silvery white scales, right? So silvery white scales will be present, right, on clinical examination. And when you are going to see this psoriasis is an autoimmune disorder. We all know that, right? And this autoimmunity is associated with which HLA? CW6, one of the frequently asked question in exam. As I said, these are autoimmune disorder. So they will be having association with the both CD4 T and CD8 T cells. In CD4 means helper T cell. Classically, they are having association with the Th17 also, which will release the interleukin 17. And that is the reason for the severe inflammation consisting of the neutrophil and monocytes. If you remember, during immunology lecture, I used to say that keep your mind on for this Th17. Whenever Th17 will come, inflammation will be severe, and that inflammation will be consisting of the neutrophil and the monocytes, right? So that's done. Clinical examination, I have shown you, silver white scales will be there. Microscopic examination is important. There will be epidermal hyperplasia, which is called as acanthosis. So epidermal hyperplasia will be there. Clubbing and fusion of the rete ridges will be present. Munro's micro abscess I have shown you. Right. So look at this. This is how it will be looking. So you can see there is a parakeratosis. What is characteristic of this parakeratosis? You can see there are neutrophilic abscess. So this is very small one, but you can see these are the neutrophil abscess which is present here. It's a scanner view. That is why you cannot appreciate. To appreciate, you have to go for the high power view like this. Right. So parakeratosis with neutrophilic abscess, which when you see on high power, they will be showing the spongiform pustule of Cogbush, or which is also called as Munro's micro abscess, right? Which is containing neutrophil. Right. So now you can see acanthosis. There is a epidermal hyperplasia going on. And you can notice here how the rete ridges are elongated and they are getting fused to each other. They are getting elongated and they are getting fused to each other. So elongated and fused rete ridges, right, is a important point which we have to. Stratum corneum, you will be seeing the neutrophil. Stratum corneum also, granulosum also, you can see that. Corneum and granulosum, these are the two layers. Neutrophilic abscess, stratum corneum and granulosum. These are the two layers where you will be seeing the abscess commonly, right? Fine. So let us examine the options one by one. Right? Easy question only. Now you understood. Now it's an easy question. So it is an autoimmune etiology. It's a true statement. Tumor necrosis factor is a major pathogenic mediator. Yes, that is a very important point. Which cytokine is most important in pathogenesis of psoriasis? Right. So remember, it is TNF alpha. Remember, TNF alpha is most important cytokine. Most important cytokine is the TNF alpha for the pathogenesis of the psoriasis. So this is also a true statement. Associated with HLA-CW6, again a true statement. Munro's micro abscess contains CD4 T cell. True or false? It's a false statement. False statement. What will be present? What will be present? They should be having neutrophil only. What kind of neutrophil? Inflammatory neutrophil, right? So inflammatory neutrophil. CD4 T cells will be neoplastic, where in case of Poutrier's microabscess, where in Poutrier's microabscess. Poutrier's microabscess. Where you will see Poutrier's microabscess? Poutrier's microabscess will be seen in mycosis fungoides. Mycosis fungoides. So now you have to understand these two microabscesses, which very important in exam. Remember, Munro's microabscess of the psoriasis will contain inflammatory cell, whereas Poutrier's microabscess of the mycosis fungoid will be consisting of neoplastic CD4 T cells. Right? So this fourth statement is wrong statement, because Munro's microabscess contains inflammatory neutrophil, not the CD4 T cell. CD4 T cells are present in the Poutrier's microabscess of the mycosis fungoid. Right? Clear? Shall we move to the next question? Next question is again an easy question. Easy question. This is an easy question, but you have to be careful. All of the following are true about squamous cell carcinoma except. All of the following are true about squamous cell carcinoma except. I think easy question only. This, I think if you have read dermatology, I think this will be very easy question. In my lecture also, I used to explain this. This is how, where it is common, where it is not common. Good. So I can see 31% only of 31% I have given the right answer for this easy question. So why it became tough? Let me explain one by one. One by one we will see. All of the following are true about squamous cell carcinoma except. Probably you have not read except because it is in one corner. That can be also one reason, right? So say this, first option, it is commoner malignant skin tumor than basal cell cancer. So I will just take one page to describe this one by one. Can you tell me what is the most common skin cancer? What is the most common skin cancer? One of the very frequently asked question in NEET PG exam. Very frequently, basal cell carcinoma is much more commoner than squamous cell cancer. Right? So now I understood basal cell carcinoma is most common skin cancer. Most common skin cancer in organ transplantation. Remember, when examiner changes the language, in transplantation, your answer will be changed to the squamous cell cancer. Is more commoner than, sorry. This was the NEET PG, that is why I'm writing like this. Squamous cell cancer, and after that, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and after that, Kaposi sarcoma. So this is the, transplant associated skin cancer. Which is the most common skin cancer after the transplant? Your answer should be the skin cancer. But when examiner is asking a very bland language without mentioning the transplant, then your answer should be the basal cell carcinoma. Right? So first statement, it is commoner malignant skin tumor than basal cell carcinoma itself is a false statement. I understood it's a false statement. It is the most common skin tumor seen in transplant patient. That is the true statement. I understood. Metastasis is usually to the regional lymph node. That is a true statement. They are seen most commonly. They are commonly seen in the old burn scars, Marjolin ulcer. Clinically, you might have seen that Marjolin ulcers. Right? These are the risk for burn scars. Right? So burn scars, old burn scars, Marjolin ulcer is a risk for the squamous cell carcinoma. Right? So now you understood. So what is the answer? Answer is A. Answer is A. It is not commoner. Who is more commoner? Basal cell carcinoma is most common. Right? And remember, basal cell carcinoma is also called as rodent ulcer. This was the FMG question previous year. So examiner can ask this question if you're going to write FMG tomorrow. Right? NHL is more commoner than Kaposi sarcoma. NHL is more common than Kaposi sarcoma in all immunodeficiency state as well as in the transplantation also. Right. This question is, direct AIMS question in 2017. I've just taken it from there, right? So which of the following is not true about this? So you have to see the immunofluorescence and then you have to decide the answer. Other scars also, I'm just telling that. Other scars also it will be present. I'm just giving one example that even burn scar also you can see. Other scars also you can see except for the lung scar. Except for the lung scar. Lung scar, adenocarcinoma will be seen. Always keep that in mind. Yes. So first we have to identify the diagnosis of this immunofluorescence staining and then you can come to the answer also. Right? So catch point is immunofluorescence microscopy. Once you identified immunofluorescence microscopy, you can crack this question. So I can see that. Very good response by all of you. Easy question. This is an easy question, right? See that 25-year-old painful blisters, right, involving skin and the oral mucosa. Right? Skin biopsy was taken and examined under direct immunofluorescence, and you can see what is this? What is this? What is the direct immunofluorescence examination? It shows the fish net appearance, right? Fish net immunofluorescence, or also called as reticular immunofluorescence. So fish net or reticular immunofluorescence is a feature of pemphigus vulgaris. Pemphigus vulgaris. Right. So now in pemphigus vulgaris, it's autoimmune disorder where IgG antibodies are formed against which component? Right, IgG antibodies are formed against desmoglein 1 and desmoglein 3. So these are the target for the IgG antibodies in the pemphigus vulgaris. Right. So that's the true statement. So A and B both are true because antibody are formed against both desmoglein 1 and desmoglein 3. Right. Antibodies are formed against hemidesmosomes. Antibodies are formed against hemidesmosome. This is a feature of bullous pemphigoid. Bullous pemphigoid. Right. So this point you have to keep in mind that C option is for the bullous pemphigoid, and that is how it will be ruled out. Right. So C option is seen in bullous pemphigoid. I just write here because there is no space. Bullous pemphigoid. Fourth option, you can see that this is IgG antibodies commonly deposited into the cell membrane. So that is a true statement. True statement, right? Look at this immunofluorescence. That's what I was talking about. What is happening in this immunofluorescence? As I said, IgG antibodies are formed and they are along the plasma membrane. So you can see this green color is the IgG antibodies which are present along the plasma membrane. And that is why this area is looking darker. This area is looking darker, and that is why it looks like a plasma membrane is looking like a green color, and that is why this appearance is called as reticular or fishnet appearance, right? And this will be seen in which condition? It will be seen in the pemphigus vulgaris. So this is the pemphigus vulgaris where you are going to see the fishnet appearance, right? So pemphigus vulgaris, you will be having fishnet appearance, right? So that's clear. Pemphigus vulgaris, when antibodies are damaging them, so that is called as acantholysis. And because of the acantholysis, what kind of blister you are going to see? Suprabasal blister. So now you can see this empty space. This empty space is the blister, right? This empty space is blister. And where is the location? Above the basal layer. This is the basal layer. This is the basal layer of the epidermis. And these basal layer are now forming the row of tombstone. That is the diagnostic feature. Row of tombstone. So you can see tombstone will be, row of tombstone will be looking like this. You can see row of tombstones will be looking like this. So row of tombstone, you can see all these tumor cells are looking like a row of tombstone. So row of tombstone, IgG antibodies are formed against desmoglein. Which desmoglein? Both 1 and 3. So this point also we have to keep in mind, right? So suprabasal blister, antibodies, row of tombstone, diagnosis will be the pemphigus vulgaris, right? Suprabasal blister, antibodies against desmoglein 1 and 3, row of tombstone appearance on the histopathological examination, fishnet or reticular appearance on the immunofluorescence microscopy, diagnosis is done, it is a pemphigus vulgaris, right? So answer is C. Now coming to the next question. Ribbon candy pattern of immunofluorescence is seen in. This is again a very good question and can be a future question in the AIIMS exam. Can be future question in the AIIMS exam. Ribbon candy appearance of the immunofluorescence will be seen in which condition? Ribbon candy pattern. See, I have just used the name which is given in Robbins. Below the image in Robbins, it is given this line, ribbon candy immunofluorescence of this disorder, right? So that is why I say that always read the line below the images. You will never commit mistake for this simple question, right? I have seen a very less response for this. Less than 30% have given right answer. Ribbon candy appearance is also called as linear immunofluorescence. Now you understood? This is also called as linear immunofluorescence. Linear immunofluorescence will be seen in hemodesmosome damage, which will be seen in bullous pemphigoid. Pemphigus vulgaris and foliaceus, you will be seeing just now. I have shown you that fish net pattern or reticular pattern. Dermatitis herpetiformis, you will see the different pattern, which is called as dermal tip pattern of the immunofluorescence. Dermal tip pattern of the immunofluorescence, right? And bullous pemphigoid will be having linear ribbon candy appearance. Linear ribbon candy appearance, as if somebody is floating the ribbon in the air. See this, the picture, right? Bullous pemphigoid, what is the pathology? It is again autoimmune disorder. Again autoimmune disorder where antibodies are formed against hemidesmosomal component, right? Antibodies are formed against hemidesmosomes. In hemidesmosomes, already we have discussed this so many times. There are two antigen, bullous pemphigoid antigen type 1, bullous pemphigoid antigen type 2. There are two antigen which will be the target for this antibody, right? But remember, only one is responsible for the blistering. So only BPAG2 is responsible for the blister formation. So blister is only because of the BPAG2, right? You can see, don't ask this kind of hypothetical question. Why you will require Goodpasture syndrome to differentiate from here? See, think clinically. Think clinically. When you are sending me a specimen, that will be the kidney specimen. or lung specimen. You will be writing that kidney specimen or lung specimen with hemoptysis has been sent. Linear immunofluorescence, Goodpasture syndrome. That's all. Skin biopsy. Skin biopsy. Bullous lesion was there, and I'm seeing the linear immunofluorescence. That is the bullous pemphigoid, right? So history will be there. You cannot. So immunofluorescence is not diagnostic until and unless you are giving history and you are supporting it with the histopathology, right? Supporting it through histopathology is necessary. That is what I have shown you in the kidney biopsies also, right? So that's done. So bullous pemphigoid, what we are going to see, that linear band of immunoglobulin IgG at the dermo-epidermal junction, and this is called as ribbon-Candy linear. So this is called as ribbon-Candy linear immunofluorescence, right? So ribbon-Candy linear immunofluorescence will be seen in the bullous pemphigoid. So done. Fine. See this. This is the pemphigus vulgaris. This is the pemphigus foliaceus. What is the difference? In pemphigus vulgaris, you are seeing the suprabasal blisters. Suprabasal blister, right? So if you are seeing the epidermis, this is the dermis, and there will be row of tombstone, and this is the area of the blister, right? This is the epidermis, right? But in case of pemphigus foliaceus, you can see this is the keratin layer, and this is the other layer of the lower layer of the dermis, and this is the subcorneal blister. I'll just show you. This is the corneal layer. This is the stratum corneum, and below the stratum corneum you will be finding the blister, and this will be the other areas of the epidermis. This is the epidermis. This is the stratum corneum. Subcorneal blister will be present here. So only histopathological you will be seeing subcorneal blister. On immunofluorescence microscopy, both will be having same finding, that is called fishnet, because the problem is same. IgG antibodies are formed against the desmoglein, and these are the present on the plasma membrane. So desmoglein, when they are damaging the desmoglein in the subcorneal layer, that will be pemphigus foliaceus type of lesion, and when it is the suprabasal area, that will be pemphigus vulgaris, right? Dermatitis herpetiformis is again a very important point, right? So how will be the deposit? Here you will see granular deposit. Can you see the granular deposit is only at the, see, this is the entire dermal junction. So this is the epidermis and this is the dermis. So dermo-epidermal junction. So what is this? This area is dermal papillae tips. Dermal papillae tips. So dermal papillae tips pattern of immunofluorescence due to the granular deposits of the IgA is a feature of dermatitis herpetiformis, right? So dermatitis herpetiformis, you will be seeing dermal papillae tip pattern of the granular IgA immunofluorescence, right? Done. Now these last two questions are simple, easy question, right? These are image-based questions. Just you have to say yes or no. That's all. After that, this is over. Right. So this question is identify this special stain for the calcium. Easy question only, right? What is this special stain for calcium? What is this special stain? See, everything has been mentioned in the question itself. Calcium stain. That's all. Right. So I can see that 56, 53, 53, 50. Why 53% have given right answer? It's an easy question only, right? So it's an easy question. See, this question is direct question. This is the red color. Red color is the calcium. So these are the alizarin red. Alizarin red, calcium will be red in appearance. Vancomycin is also a calcium stain. Vancomycin is also a calcium stain, and in kosa means kala, kala means black. So black color will be Vancomycin stain. Black color will be Vancomycin stain. Oil red, red color will be there, and this is not for the calcium, this is for the fat or lipid. Sudan black B, black color will be for the lipid. So these are all lipids. So last two is for lipid. Now you can see that this calcium is, on He stain, basophilic deposit, right? Basophilic amorphous deposit. Basophilic, no morphology. Basophilic, no morphology, amorphous deposit, right? And this is the calcium stain where you can see alizarin red. So this is the alizarin red stain. And now you can see this is the von Kosa stain. This is the von Kosa stain and showing calcium in black color. Showing calcium in black color. Earlier it was alizarin red, alizarin red, and calcium is in red color, right? Now this is the fat stain. Both are fat stain. Oil red O stain. Oil red O stain. Red color will be appearance, right? And this is the Sudan black B. Black color will be the lipid stain. So this is the Sudan black B. Sudan black B. Black color is the lipid. Oil red. Red color will be the lipid. So both are lipid stains. Both are lipid stains. So just remember these things can be asked in your future exam, right? Now coming to the next and the last question of this session, right? Identify this special stain for the skin pigment. Easy question. Identify this special stain for the skin pigment. What is this special stain? Right. So I was telling you this is a simple question, and here you can see that these are the dark brown or black pigment. So what is this skin pigment? So I already told you skin pigment, right? So you can see that skin pigment, only one stain you are seeing, that is the Fontana-Masson stain, right? So Fontana-Masson stain will be showing you this dark brown or black granular deposit. Black granular deposit. So what is this? This is the melanin. So melanin will be looking like this. So what is this? It's a Fontana-Masson stain. So Fontana-Masson stain will be looking like this. Pearl's stain is the, Pearl's Prussian blue stain is for iron. And iron will be looking blue in color, right? Iron will be looking blue in color. So they are not blue. Sudan black B, they can be black, but Sudan black B is not for the skin pigment. This is for lipid. This is for lipid. Masson trichome stain is not for the skin pigment. This is for the collagen and connective tissue. Collagen and connective tissue, right? So now you understood. These are the important thing you have to understand. And this is the another same picture. I have kept it here. So always remember Fontana-Masson was the NEET PG question in 2015-17. So this can be also question in the FMG exam who are going to appear tomorrow, right? And this is all. This is the Masson trichome stain which I wanted to show you, right? This is the Masson trichome stain, and showing the connective tissue in the blue color. So blue color is the collagen or connective tissue, right? So collagen or connective tissue, right? So this is the last line for you all. When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. So this holds exactly true when you are going through the preparation phase, because in preparation phase, you will be having lots and lots of distraction, family distraction, friendship distraction, relationship distraction. All these are various types of distractions. Whatever you are facing in your life, you have to keep moving on. Please remember my words, because I have gone through all these phases of life, and I have seen millions of people around me who have gone through, right? Some have not, some have not overcome to that situation because they did not move on. So always remember, whatever is happening, keep going on. Sometime you will be having problem from the home or maybe from the friends, but the basic essence is you keep moving on. success will be coming to you, right? There will be a tough time also, there will be a good time also. So tough time, you have to survive. Somehow you have to survive. And in preparation phase, how you are going to survive? You revise notes, that's all. Notes revision is very, very important. Please remember my words. Try to wake up early in the morning. Try to study for 1.5 hours. Please do not become over smart and modern people. No, I will be sleeping by 3 o'clock. I'll be waking up by 12 o'clock, and this is my schedule. This is how all toppers they do. See, I will just tell you one thing. We are not writing only exam, we are having our life as an exam. And remember, our older people, whatever they have said, that early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. It's still holding true. Why? You can see that why people are so vulnerable, why we are when we are doing MD and all. I have seen the toppers are getting frustrated. Sir, lots of work are there. What lots of work are there? Have we not done all those work? Right? Because our pattern has been changed. We started thinking whatever we are doing is the right thing only. So that is not the right thing. Please remember my words. Morning time, your mind is most fresh and you receive maximum. Afternoon you will not be receiving any, because all your friends will be there. Come for tea, come for lunch, come for dinner, like that they'll be keep on saying. So it will be not possible. I will always say that morning time is the best time to study and revise. Please remember. And when you are going for your exam, this will help you a lot. If you are waking up till 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock and next day morning 9 o'clock you are having exam, you will be feeling slow, sleepy. You will not be able to catch the language. So that is the one big problem you may be facing. So try to understand this point. Revise every day something. Revise every day something. This will help you a lot in your exam. Thank you so much for coming. Tomorrow again 9:30 I'm coming, and tomorrow I think I will be coming with the chapter called inflammation. And along with inflammation, I will be keeping the question from the endocrinology. So one from the general path, one from the systemic path. So inflammation plus endocrinology. Get ready. Tomorrow will be the smash hit. Very good question I'm going to prepare, and this will definitely these topics are going to come in your AIIMS exam also. So thank you so much to all of you. Good night. Tomorrow we will meet again by 9:30.